Today I want to talk to you about the most obscure, most disturbing games that you've never heard of. First one I want to talk about is a game called Garage, Bad Dream Adventure. Now this game I've never played, and I'm probably never going to play. I guess it was leaked, maybe I could. I'm a big fan of Lost Media. There's a Lost Media wiki, and Lost Media is a piece of art that is known, but it's no longer accessible to the general public. The reason I bring up Lost Media is this is a game that was only printed, I don't even know if it was printed 100 copies. I think it did get a few thousand copies pressed. This thing was released and completely forgotten about, and then through the magic of the internet, it was somehow found again. People didn't even think it existed for the longest time because it was so weird and so bizarre. You're just kind of like, wow, what is going on here? The whole idea of this game is I believe it was inspired by the creator's nightmare, and he recreated the whole nightmare. It's a Japanese game, so it's really hard for me to actually know anything that's going on here. That's the general thing that I know of it, and honestly, I can't even watch this game for too long, like watch gameplay videos of it without kind of feeling weirded out. It's just so eerie, and I really like works like this that are that eerie, and especially when it's a computer game and it's obscure and it took so long for them to find it, because somebody did find it, they bought it off of eBay. Now it's out there. It's just a really weird, strange, abstract thing. I don't know if it really has any coherent sense to it, but it's really strange. It will definitely keep you up at night if you're looking for like some creepypasta nightmare fuel right now, which that game's plenty of. Kowloon's Gate is rumored to have 5 copies made of American translation, which I don't know if that's actually real or not. There is a YouTube comment on one of the videos where the guy's talking about it, so that's really where I got that information from. The Kowloon walled city was, and I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly, Kowloon walled city, it was an actual place in Japan, and it is very, very fascinating. There's a lot of information out there on this place, and yet at the same time there's not. It's just a very mysterious concrete structure, but inside of it, it's an entire city. It's basically the structure that was a living and breathing machine. It's usually portrayed as a very disturbing place. And that's essentially what this game is. They've used that setting of the walled city and they cyberpunk it, which I'm a huge cyberpunk fan. But what I find interesting seems to pop up in a lot of these disturbing games. I think it's just the setting kind of lends itself to very huge mystery. It's just a setting and an atmosphere where you can really get surreal. And that's what you have here in Cyberpunk, but it's a full motion video game, and I think it looks really sick, really groundbreaking for its time. This is again like 95 or 96. It's like Mr. Riven, which those games are phenomenal in themselves, but they actually full motion videoed out every step that you take, which there's another game I'm going to mention right now, Obsidian, which is one of my favorite games of all time. A lot of really wild, crazy, surreal, kind of Dolly inspired, out there, really exploring the visual potential of games. And I don't know why, but PC games, they went through some sort of era that was much weirder. Kowloon's Gate is actually a console game. It's a PlayStation game. It's developed by Sony Music. It's still a game that they really love over there. It comes up in a lot of surveys and lists over there for them. It's disturbing. It's weird. I wish I understood it. There's not been any real translation of it. But it has a lot to do with Eastern philosophy and the setting, which the setting is really the only thing that's going to like really flip you out here, besides whatever the fuck this thing is. I mean, I don't even know. I'll probably get a little freaked out. Like, it's weird. It's a weird, disturbing, obscure, weird thing. Messiah. The compelling thing about Messiah is its concept. right off the bat, there's just something about a angel baby protagonist set in a dystopian Blade Runner early 2000s Unreal Tournament aesthetic. It's a very strange look. It didn't meet the expectations that it had off of the success of MDK, which Shiny had developed years before. But it also had a public outcry and controversy leading up to release. The LA Times ran an article just really talking about how just the use of the word Messiah from its initial announcement was doomed to fail. And Computer Gaming World gave it a 1.5. They called it truly repellent, saying, I don't even like to think of the sort of sadist that would enjoy this kind of thing. From everything that I've seen of the game, there's definitely a fair amount of shocking moments in it that I think is ultimately why the game got buried, not because it didn't necessarily meet technical expectations. Everything I've seen with what they were trying to achieve and its technical prowess, more of the choices that they ended up going with. There's definitely this attitude that you had to be provocative in order to sell. At the same time, this is before Grand Theft Auto, but they're doing a lot of things here that I think you do see in Grand Theft Auto, with cops chasing you and trying to kill you and you escape it, but you're mainly using a possession technique here, which is a really cool game mechanic. But the fact that they built the entire game around just the possession mechanic, which I think I've seen that in a few things like Destroy All Humans. The fact that they built a whole game around it is just a really weird, bizarre game mechanically, and it has a really strange aesthetic that I think they successfully pulled that off. I mean, it's just such an incongruent image to see a baby Messiah in a diaper against a evil, ugly, dystopian setting. What I really like is they kind of took that cyberpunk setting that we're all familiar with, really go dark with it. Like, they really explore like the carnage and the evil that goes into that. And I'm sure they're picking a lot of that out of a lot of 80s movies, because I know there's like references to the Chugs here, which is a cannibalistic sewer people movie from the 80s. So it's just bizarre. I mean, they really went for something bizarre and they really achieved it here. So give this game a look if you're only really intrigued by something that's going to really like weird you out. The next game I got is Harvester, which is another really interesting, really disturbing game. And this game actually has quite a bit of a cult following, so it's possible that you are familiar with this one. It certainly wasn't mainstream, and it certainly was a big flop. Again, it was mainly because of the controversy surrounding the game that there was public interest at all. It was kind of like this Mortal Kombat era, and the game ultimately is like a commentary of Mortal Kombat kind of games. I think it actually does have a really kind of adult and interesting take on video game violence. Why this game is really worth checking out, because surface aesthetic alone, which I think is why all of these games are really compelling, really interesting, and captivating and disturbing, is because they all use very contrasting imagery. With Harvester, which I actually feel, you see this imagery sometimes, but basically on the surface of 1950s America, it looks very clean, it looks very nice. It's kind of a Stepford Wives feel, where everything looks clean and shiny on the surface, but you can very easily take that image and just start to hide like disturbing imagery behind it, and it immediately becomes like very striking and very unnerving. It makes you uncomfortable. Harvester, that's kind of the whole premise of the game, is you're kind of in this uncomfortable setting where you wake up and you're suddenly in the 1950s, and it's very much like a Leave It to Beaver sitcom, and everything seems very squeaky clean. You have your mom downstairs and she's smiling through her teeth, but you start to pick up like this air of, you know, something's deeply off, something's wrong here. And it's that feeling that carries through this entire game that really does get under your skin, and it really does make you uncomfortable, and it can get really disturbing. It's funny though at the same time. You'll go down to the fire station, and the fire station mean, it is a stereotype. There's lots of offensive stereotypes in all of these games, actually. I think a lot of the reasons all of these games failed is because they maybe went a little too far on some of the imagery, but I think that's what ultimately gives them a lasting impact, is what makes them worth revisiting in the first place. Harvester, very much a conspiracy story, and it doesn't take much for me to show you here what's disturbing and what's awful about this game. And it shows, but I think there's definitely a point to it. It's basically a giant commentary, a giant satire on video game violence, and that ultimately makes it a very interesting game, even if it shows you some really disturbing shit. The message ends up being, well, it breaks the fourth wall, and it's really good. I encourage you to go watch the ending if you're not going to play the game, or if you are going to play the game. It's a very satisfying, great fourth wall break that has some great commentary at the end of the day. It's a genius game. Okay, next game is a game called Silverload, and I find this game really weird, really disturbing because of its use of illustration. There's just a really strange contrast here of an old Western Oregon Trail feel, but it's combined with this really spooky, eerie. I think a lot of it has to do with how it's drawn. This as a point and click on the PlayStation is original, but then as a point and click alone, it's really interesting and strange. And I think that's really what it achieves most. It just really pulls off a really interesting, unique story. Like, the whole idea of it is, don't go to Silverload. Like, it's really like cryptic, and everybody's like really ugly to you there. It starts off, you're just kind of a cowboy dude. So you think. And I like that, how it just kind of starts, boom, there you are. Very Oregon Trail feel. You almost feel like maybe you are about to go on an Oregon Trail kind of adventure. You do investigative work, and through that you find that a son or a daughter is missing. So you have to venture into town of Silverload to find the missing child. So it's definitely like any old premise in an adventure game. Somebody's missing, you have to go find them. Go into town, and night falls, and Silverload is this old western town out in the middle of nowhere, and clearly the protagonist doesn't want to be there. And that's kind of where you find out through the unveiling of the story that you actually are a Native American character. They've already probably pillaged the land and massacred people. And in a way, I think through the story you find that because of what the white people have done to the Native American people, that's why you have the disturbing aspects of the story, because there is this mystic element of the protagonist who is a Native American person who does have a connection with the spirits, and the spirits are responsible for the hauntings of the setting and of the story. So I just find that to be a really interesting story. It's really weird, maybe I revealed too much, but I find it just a really compelling, really interesting, really captivating video game. What is that? Was that 6? That's the top 6 weirdest, most obscure, most disturbing games that you've probably never heard of or ever played, that will definitely keep you up at night. Hope you enjoyed this list. Subscribe for more content. I'm going to try to come up with some more like weird lists like this. I think the next thing I'm going to do is like games that got unnecessarily edgy out of nowhere. I'm talking about like the sequels where it's just like, whoa, huge leap. I think maybe you can think of a couple of them in your head right now. Try to think of what I'll get on the next video. Stay tuned. Later.